anyone have another question? I have a few, and then maybe that might generate a few more ideas and continue our conversation. Kim, I wanted to ask you, you're talking about working as a team and having to build on the individual strengths. I know sometimes in news, just like any other organization, there's a little motto behind the scenes: those who can are asked to do more than those who can't. And sometimes you feel like you have so much more responsibilities than other people. And it starts to create this, I guess, some static, if you will, and some distance between what should be a team and group environment. How do you handle that?
Well, I think we had some great advice today on doing some of that, but I'll tell you, one of my most recent, the transition I'm going through right now and working on this project has been one area where I really had to clearly define some roles and responsibilities. So in managing salespeople, you tend to set goals. You know, let's go, they're very specific. We need to hit certain numbers, we need to touch a certain amount of customers, etc. So going from a sales role to a non-sales role, I immediately found I definitely had my go-to people. And in order for my team to function well, I really need to establish, okay, here's what people are going to do, and here's how we're going to manage what we're doing among our team, so that we're clear, we're not stepping on one another. I hope that's a little helpful. So from a teaming perspective, I constantly, when we meet, am reminding each of my team members of what I hold them responsible for in a very polite way, without saying you're responsible for blah blah blah. But it's can I start with you, Patrick? Can you give me an update on data? Right? Let's go to you. Let's talk about onboarding. And I found that when I have done this and I have made myself be disciplined about driving things to the right people and not panicking, so backing up and saying I have something that needs to be done, don't let me just grab the person who's sitting next to me, but let me go to the person who should truly own it, it helps tremendously. So again, it's definitely about setting those priorities. It's definitely about holding my team accountable for what it is that they need to do. And it is also about me making sure that I stick to the discipline of doing what I say that I'm going to do. So, and that's something we say within Lenovo, right? We say what we're going to do, then we do what we say. And that is what I have to make sure I live as a model, and I drive that with my team as well. There's plenty of times when I have said, why were you in this meeting? Explain to me again, what were you doing in there? That's great, that's fantastic, I know you're interested in that, but you should have at least taken this person with you, or maybe you shouldn't have been there either. And it's okay to excuse yourself after you've been in for a few minutes and you realize you're out of your element or you're in the wrong place, and let's just restructure it. So that's what I do from a teaming perspective.
Well, I think it's important for management to kind of describe, I mean, our news director just said the other day, we have basically different courses for different races. And, you know, some people you know are good, in our case, you know, breaking news, so you get them out the door, even if they're not the closest. And you know that this person, it might be better at a feature, so let's get them over there, even though that person over here would probably rather do that. And so, but at least he took the time to recognize that, because some of us were left thinking, yeah, you know, you always go to the same go-to people. And sometimes you just feel like, wow, I'm totally overworked while someone else is in la-la land. This is cake. So it's kind of establishing, or perhaps taking the time to compliment your employees' strengths, to let them know how valuable they are to your team and your team's success. Does anyone have another question? Sonya, I wanted to ask you, how do you set those boundaries? We talked, some have 2, some have 3 cell phones, the iPad, other smartphones, things like that. How do you try to set those boundaries at work and also at home? Because you know the things blowing up at dinner time when you're trying to re-engage with your children, re-engage with your husband.
It's called self-discipline. It's called self-discipline because we all like to be connected. Most people do. There are personality types who do not like to be connected, but most of us like to be connected and feel like we're in the know and that we're giving to others to make them in the know. So personally, and then this is what I coach people to do also, turn off the cell phone. Have certain times when you don't have any cell phone, or smartphone, or whatever you have no computer dingings going on to tell you that the new message just arrived and you've got to rush over there to see what it is. But turn it all off and have certain times of the day when you are in quiet time. It turns out that the World Health Organization just came out with a study. I'm full of studies because I read this stuff all the time, but they just came out with a study 2 weeks ago in which they had been looking at the major pollutants in the world. And guess what the highest, biggest problem is? Noise. It turns out noise is second and air is first. So air pollution first, and then second is noise, and it's noise around the planet. And so when people, and then physicians who deal with this say that when you turn off the noise for even 5 minutes, you rest your brain, and then your body calms down. And so I always suggest that to people. I do it. My phone is off at 6 o'clock. You know, leave me a text or do something, whatever, but I'm not answering it because I have things I have to do to have a full life.
Until the next morning?
At 9 o'clock it goes back on and I see what just came in. But you do need some downtime, and the only way to do it is to create it for yourself. Nobody else does it for you. The other thing is when you go on vacation, think about what that means. And you decide what it means. But for most people, there's more enjoyment and more refreshment to the body if you turn off all of it. It would be nice to leave it at home, but we don't do that.
Sonya, can I follow up on that? Because I am curious about this. I try to do that, but I have found that clients, when you say, well, I'm on vacation, they go, oh, okay, this will only take an hour. You know, there's no boundaries anymore. Or, you know, well, I'm going to be here until 7. That's fine. I can call you at 8. You know, tonight. You know, call you today. That works for me. So, how do you suggest setting those boundaries for clients?
What I've been doing is telling folks, these are the hours I work in, and I'm happy to talk to you outside of those hours, and here are the outside hours. But there are some times when my phone will be off, when I won't be able to communicate with you. Those are the down times in which I do the work or I renew myself, and I'm very honest with them about it. And most people are okay with that because they're doing it. If they're not doing it, they say, oh, that's a good idea, I should be doing it.
Well, the meeting with yourself, I mean, how perfect is that? The other day, well, this week I'm filling in on our 4 o'clock newscast, and I didn't have to go out to turn a story yesterday, and the executive producer said, oh, you're probably going to be bored today. I'm like, bored? I have 200 emails I still have to respond to, and I'm still figuring out Facebook. Yes, I'm one of the ones that has not joined Facebook yet for this exact reason. I feel like I can't keep up with things right now. How in the world am I going to keep up with another feed? Although it's an important way to stay connected, especially staying connected with our viewers, generate story ideas, and having become part of the conversation. So it is definitely a balancing act that I think all of us are juggling in this room. Anyone have any additional questions before we wrap up? I do just want to say thank you again for coming out, and I love, again, the theme, things that go bump at work, because it was a bump in scheduling that brought me here, but I've told so many of you that I'm so excited that it worked out this way, because I've been wanting to come to one of these luncheons, but my regular schedule doesn't allow it. So sometimes there is a positive when there's a bump at work, and I'm glad it's what brought me here today. So thank you all for your time and questions. And thank you